Welcome to Transcendence Talks podcast with your host, licensed professional counselor, Kristy Crabtree. Join us as we build the bridge between psychology and spirituality and discuss psychology for the soul.
Hey everybody, welcome to Transcendence Talks podcast. We're here today with psychic medium Lori Hines, and Lori's an author. She's a psychic medium. She's presented at workshops, at conferences, libraries, and colleges. She's a volunteer in the Find Me group, and so this is a group of psychic mediums who help locate missing people and solve cold cases, which I want to get more into. She's worked with Bullion Plaza Cultural Center in Arizona on projects related to psychic archaeology. I didn't know what that was until today. And she's a resident psychic medium for Arizona Ghost Adventures. So welcome, Lori.
Well, thanks, Kristy. It's great to be on.
It's great to have you. Let's just dive in. Psychic archaeology. I studied archaeology in my undergraduate work, but I've never heard of psychic archaeology. I've always been fascinated by, the ancient world and what we can learn about cultures. So I'd love to hear more about your work.
Thanks. I'm sure a lot of people do. And there is something on YouTube with a project that I worked on with Bullion Plaza, and we kind of touched on this before going on air. But psychic archaeology kind of takes it to the next level. So it's using your mind. Some people need to actually touch an object to pick up on vibes on it and history and on the people that might have had something to do with that object. But for me, I can just, if somebody says, okay, Lori, I want you to do a reading on something, and they're like, 1,000 miles away, and they just tell me what that object is, I will literally just start getting messages on it. But with the psychic archaeology, I was invited to do a reading on an 1800s historic gun. I think it was the early 1800s. So they asked me to come in, I think it was about a year or so ago, year and a half ago. The very first project I worked on with the museum was kind of going in initially and telling him what history I was picking up on it. And so one of the main things I said, well, I see it being kind of encased in mud. It was there for a while, and I think it had been found in the Globe area. And I said, well, the last owners I'm picking up on are like a couple of Apache brothers. And I said, I'm getting a visual of one of them actually being shot and killed. And I think they might have both been shot and killed. But what was interesting is the guy, the Apache, or the Native American that was associated with the gun, he was literally the last owner, I believe, before the gun was lost.
So they were able to go back and validate this information that you're picking up on psychically then?
Not always.
Not always.
That's the problem. And that's why sometimes they'll do psychic archaeology to try and fill in those pieces. But yeah, it's not always easy to go in, because if you don't have that history, it's hard to, if you don't have a witness or the history behind it. So that's why they bring in a psychic to say, okay, well, that makes sense as to why, if that would, because Apache kind of do live in that area, reside in that area. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was picking up on. And another medium came in and did a brief reading on it, and she kind of picked up on some of the same stuff I did. And that's usually that's nice when you get a couple of mediums working together that kind of can confirm that. But most of the time, there is no way to kind of, confirm that history unless you have a historian that's been in the area that has that extensive background. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
I love that the museums, though, are open to relying on the way that you source information. And I'd like to talk about that with our listeners, because I'm sure people in their minds who maybe are unfamiliar with this are like, well, how does that work? Who is giving you this information? And I'd love for you to just speak to that a little bit.
That's a great point, because the gentleman that brought me in, and he passed away like 6 to 8 months ago, I believe. And he was a really close friend, so that was a hard hit. But he's the one that actually brought me in to do the project. And he's the one that brought me out to the Q Ranch in Young, Arizona, to do the history out there as well and pick up on the prehistoric history. And so that was a much broader project, because I had a lot of land to walk around and pick up on. Like, I literally came across 2 different medicine men on 2 different instances when I was out there. And like I said, we came across something supernatural. I literally saw what looked like a devil dog or a huge cat with red eyes, and he was seeing the same things. And so it just comes from my spirit guides. Like, they were like, Lori, that is what you think it is. Just take a step back, because it's a shapeshifter and it's dangerous and it didn't want us there. It's amazing. And a lot of mediums that have true, if they are true mediums, I think can pick up on stuff like that. You don't have to have an interest in archaeology to really pick up on stuff like that. If you're a true medium, I think a lot of mediums could go out there and pick up on a lot of the same details. But yeah, with Tom, he was highly spiritual to begin with. So a lot of other people in the museum might, some of them were against it. Wow. And they were a little bit. So that was what was so exciting about being able to do that and take my psychic abilities to a whole new level. Because like you, I love archaeology. I used to be with Arizona Archaeological Society, and my books that every time I publish a book, they all involve archaeology, anthropology, and things like that. Native American history, the Southwest culture, and all that. So that was really exciting for me to be able to do that. But that's a great point, because not a lot of museums would know. They wouldn't want to have anything to do with that.
That is so progressive. That is so cool. So how did you know you were a medium? Is it a gift that you had to develop and hone, or was it something just kind of innate that you had to learn to understand and uncover?
I get asked that so often. And what's really interesting is a lot of psychic mediums actually their abilities start when they're born or soon after they're born, maybe when they're 5, 10, when they're really young. But for me, I don't remember picking up on anything like that. It was when I started writing my books. Like the Ancient Ones, Caves of the Watchers, that's kind of when I started developing those abilities. And they started becoming strong. And when I first started doing the psychic thing, it was more past life readings. And then my abilities started progressing to having deceased people step forward in readings and then giving messages for my clients and things like that. And that's usually how it works, is that your abilities can progress. And like when I did your reading, my spirit guides kept saying, do you realize you're reading her mind? You're starting to be able to read your clients' minds. I'm like, no. They're like, yes, that's what you're doing. And your abilities are progressing. But that's how it works for a lot of psychics and mediums. Mm-hmm. Things do progress for us. We all have our own abilities, just like you do with your clients.
Absolutely. I found for me that there were like events in my life that were initiations or activations, if you will, that, my gifts they'd evolve, they'd change over time. What do you think it was about writing the book? And I know for me as an author myself, my books are channeled, right? It's like I could sit at the keyboard, and I didn't realize at first that I was channeling. Maybe I didn't even call it that, but it's what it was. It felt like the book was already there, and it just had to move through me. And I just needed the space and time to see it and be with those words and translate the words. So I could see how writing could be an activating event. Do you think it was the act of writing, or was it something else?
It's a combination of writing and then my spirit guides wanting me to get to know who I was, about them, because a lot of people's spirit guides, which they don't realize this, your spirit guides could be deceased relatives, deceased loved ones, but they can also be animals and people that you've known from past lives. And when I say past lives, think reincarnations, because most of us haven't had just one reincarnation, which is what a lot of people think. We've had many. I'm talking 100, 200. Like I can literally tell somebody when they're sitting in front of me how many they've had. And so people are like, really? I'm like, well, yeah, you consider how far back history goes. I've come across clients and picked up, I'm like, did you realize you were a prehistoric being, or you crossed the Bering Land Bridge? And so Look how far back that is. And so you've got a special group of guides that you're drawing upon too, which was what we talked about in your reading. Mm-hmm. So for everybody, for me, it was a combination of just the fact that I had an interest in archaeology and anthropology, but that could have been tied to something with past lives as well. So it's all of that together. And the creative aspect, it's not just writing. Like people that make jewelry, painters, all of that can be easily channeling, like what you do as well. Healers all channel their spirit guides. They channel spirit, whether deceased relatives or actual spirit guides. So, and that's the thing, like a lot of us have so much, we're associated with our own piece of history. Because when I'm talking spirit guides from different eras, like I have prehistoric spirit guides, I have Native American, Cherokee, Navajo, a lot of Native American, I have Roman guides, and that's why a lot of people become so interested in history too. Right. And it's like people need to take advantage of that and think, okay, well, wow, that's pretty cool. But if you get in touch with your spirit guides, that's the kind of information you'll get back. That's who those people step forward for people. So you can really learn a lot about history by getting to know your spirit guides.
I completely agree, because I feel like I've had that experience as well, where I think that's actually where my next book is coming from, is, some channeled information from my guides about different points of history, which I'm excited. I feel like it's still moving through me and still unfolding. But it's interesting because I almost feel like there comes this point of time where your past lives, your own unique interests, talents, and abilities, and then your spiritual gifts kind of merge, and it helps shape, your focus moving forward. And it sounds like your gift to the world is coming through your writings and maybe unique perspectives on history or culture that only you can share.
Exactly. And that's where the books come in. And that's why a lot of the facts that are in the books, I tell people this is pulled from past lives. My spirit guides are like, you're pulling this character from a past life. This is like somebody similar that you've known in a past life. And so two of my main spirit guides are Joe and another Native American that I call the Princess, and they're actually brother and sister. And I actually met them in person. This sounds freaking insane, but they actually showed up at one of my book signings. And then it was a few days after, maybe a few weeks, I'm like, you guys, I thought they were like, boyfriend and girlfriend, and they were laughing, and they're like, no, they were like, we showed ourselves there, because she made a really strange remark to me when I was sitting at the table talking to her, and I was giving her the spiel on the Ancient One series. And she looks at me and she goes, yeah, I have a feeling. I think we've known each other in our past life. I know we have. And then the way she looked at me was like, okay, this is, I think when I first, just the look she gave me, I'm like, hey, is this a spirit guide? Or I wasn't sure. I thought it was kind of strange. And then like a week or two later, they said, yeah, we're your spirit guides. We're Joe and the Princess. So, and that was mind blowing, because people don't realize they can actually meet their angels and their spirit guides in person. And most people will know when they have. They will give you a clue of who they are.
Like through third dimensional actual human beings, or like materializing in spirit?
Materializing just like I'm looking at you, or I would be looking at anybody in front of me. And I've talked to other clients that have said they've had the same experience. And it's usually not a long one, but I saw them walk out the door and they were walking around at the event. And the thing is, there's a lot of like granite boulders in the area. And we think about geography, and you see this a lot on paranormal shows, that can actually enhance the energy for them to be able to appear. And that's what they were telling me. That's an amazing place. It's a magical place out there where I was doing the book reading. That was near Tombstone here in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And it was called the Triangle T Ranch, because that's one of the settings in the first book. So people don't realize, and like when you go to a lot of locations, if there's water nearby or certain, geology, geography, locations, that kind of thing, that will actually help people manifest. That can actually help spirits manifest.
That's incredible. So what is it about those elements? How does that all kind of synergize into, helping them materialize? Oh,
that's a good question. I think it's just a matter of power. Like it could be a combination of water. Like I said, just the elements themselves. With quartz, there's a certain amount of quartz there, and just the granite, the boulders, things like that. I mean, you can feel that energy when you either drive or walk into there. So it's just the ranch itself. It has boulders all around. It's surrounded by that kind of geology. So they were telling me that's kind of what helps them appear. And it's if they're ready too. It's like they don't always feel a need to. For some reason, I think with the book signing going on and things like that, that kind of energy might have helped as well. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So they just wanted me to know who they were. If they feel it's time, they will do that. I think a lot of people experience that and they just don't realize it.
It's funny. That brings up a memory for me that I haven't thought about in a long time. After my grandma passed, I think I was 14 or 15 when she passed away, and she had cancer. And I remember it was pretty soon after she passed away, walking through the mall. And I remember this woman turned around and made eye contact with me and winked, and then turned around and walked away. And she looked just like my grandma, like doppelganger, right? And I just remember thinking, like, my heart was racing, because I was like, wait, am I grandma?
Oh, wow.
And the way she winked, it was like very much her energy. And so, I wondered at the time, okay, does spirit kind of use other people?
Yeah.
To just say, hey, it's me. I'm here. I'm winking at you. I'm watching you, even though clearly that wasn't my grandma, but who knows? Maybe she was able to.
I hear that. That's a really good point, because I'm hearing that woman was channeled. And that happens a lot more than people realize.
I think it happens with animals all the time too, because they're just so open and receptive,
Yeah, and animals act as our spirit guides too. Like when they cross that rainbow bridge, they become our spirit guide as well, just like humans do, or deceased relatives do when they pass.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So how, as you develop your gifts over time, for our listeners who maybe have these things coming online or are starting to have experiences, but maybe don't know how to hone their gifts, what did you do to really help develop your intuition and, harness it in a way that serves people?
That's a really good question. And when I do workshops, I tell people the first thing I say is I can't hand you a book. I'm kind of trying to write a memoir to give this kind of advice, but I can't hand everyone a book and say, okay, this is how you do it, because it's different for everybody. Some have more ability to see, some have the ability to hear, some can actually do really good with smells. And so it depends on your abilities. But I tell people just talk to your spirit guides, whether it's telepathic whether it's out loud, because that is one of the strongest ways. They want us to communicate with them. They want us, especially with deceased relatives, that's usually where people are comfortable. Okay, well, my mom is passed, my dad's passed, and I want to talk to them. And I get that there's no physical connection there anymore, but I'm like, they will hear you, just talk to them. That is one of the strongest ways. And that's a lot of the clients that I do readings for. That's how they're developing their abilities. And I said, just trust. You have to, it takes a while. You might not start hearing messages from that person, but like if you're a visual person like I am, they might just watch for the visuals that they might try and give you. Just listen for any kind of sound, voices. And I'm not talking like voices like I'm talking to you. Just kind of trust what you're hearing with your own,
like your
with
own
your mind. Exactly, because that's, usually it's visuals or that way too. And what people don't realize is also in dreams, Kristy, that's people do not realize. A lot of people have very vivid dreams and they don't trust what they're seeing. And I want to tell your audience now, you will see your spirit guides in your dreams. That is a lot of who you will be communicating with in your dreams. Sometimes it is your subconscious, but a lot of times, especially if you keep saying the same figure over and over. Yeah. And I've had people say, I've seen my grandmother, and I'm like, yeah, they're acting as a spirit guide for you. Maybe they have a message or they just want you to know that you're okay. So people don't realize how strong dreams. I have very vivid dreams.
Oh my gosh, me too. Okay, so this very office that I'm sitting in right now was the first office in multiple that I got when I was growing and expanding my business. And my stepdad, Frank, had passed away in my early 20s, and he was always my go-to for business advice.
Okay.
As I was growing my business, I missed him so much because I didn't have my confidant, my helper with me anymore, and I felt really alone.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is before I got my very first office, so I'm going to tilt my camera. You can see there's a balcony here.
Oh, yeah.
And I started having dreams about a year before I opened this particular location. And Frank I would go to work. It was a normal day in my dream. I would be going to work, going to the office, and I would realize I'd go to put the key in the lock and it wouldn't open. And I couldn't open the door. And it was like a stress dream where I'm like, oh, shoot, I can't get into the office and now I'm running late. But then I'd turn around to go look for my key, and my stepdad, who was deceased, would be standing behind me. And he had no words. It was all telepathic. I could just feel what he was saying. And he would hand me a key. And I would open the door with the key and it would open. And there would always be an office. It would look different every single time, but it would have a balcony every time. Wow. Sometimes it would be over water and sometimes it'd be in a forest. But I had this dream probably 5 times through 2019 in various settings and locations. And then come 2020, I was ready to expand. And I needed help finding an office building. And I was like, Frank, I just need your help. Yeah. And I toured this office and I walked straight back to this room that I'm sitting in now. And I saw the balcony and I just got chills down my spine. And I felt Frank standing there and he said, this one's going to work out for you, baby girl. I've got you. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I turned around and I looked at the realtor and I think this is it. And this office was so old. It looked ugly and it looks great now. But I looked and I was like, we're going to have to negotiate a few things if this is going to work. It needs a facelift. And he was like, you know what? It's COVID. We're really struggling to get renters in. I'll work with you. Like, you just tell me what you want done. It was like the easiest transaction. And I just knew it was right because Frank had guided me to it, for a year prior. It was so beautiful. So I feel like I'll never leave this office. It's so special.
It's nice from what I can see, the little bit I can see. But I think he's been helping you in a lot of other ways. It's not just the office space. I think he's been a big part of all the things that are happening for you. That's why your pieces are all fitting together pretty easily. So that's pretty cool.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to get all emotional now.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I even asked him, there's a pink chair behind me. And when I hire new employees, I ask him to sit across from me in the pink chair and to help me feel, not look at their resume, but I asked Frank, please help me feel if this is going to be the right fit for my business. And I'm learning to feel a yes or a no from him when I interview people.
Okay. I'm seeing somebody with dark hair. I don't know if that's somebody that's another employee that's coming. Did he have dark hair? Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe I'm seeing him then. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing some of your guides standing behind you too. There's one that's kind of off to the right in my view. So yeah.
I'd love to know more if you'd like to share.
Well, when we talked about otherworldly guides during our reading, I saw one of them kind of, standing behind you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because we had talked about that influence as well. Mm. And people think, okay, it's only human guides that we have, but I'm here to tell you, There's some pretty powerful otherworldly beings. There's what we call elementals, which are like fairies, dragons, hobbits, and elves, and they all have their own purpose in nature. And that's a lot of what the children's book involves, is talking about that, and it ties into spirituality. So it's not just human deceased relatives we have, it's past life reincarnations, it's our animal pets, it's spirit animals, it could be otherworldly beings. It depends on our past lives and what we've experienced.
I have a question for you about that, with especially around the elementals, because they're in our lore.
Yeah.
I feel like there was probably a time when the veil was maybe a little bit more thin and they were just a part of our lives. And I'm wondering if that's true, what happened that we stopped perceiving them, in our environment?
Well, I think the veil is becoming more and more thin now. And with I have a lot of otherworldly guides, and some are actually living beings, and some have passed on. That's a really good question. My guides are saying the veil is actually becoming more thin now, and it could depend where you live, where you are, that kind of thing. But in the children's book, I talk about how many different types of elementals there are. I mean, there aren't just fairies, and there are like maybe hundreds of species of fairies. Same with hobbits and elves. And there's dragons. People are like, oh no, dragons are myths. It's like, my guides are like, no, they're not. We have actual dragons in Hawaii. I was literally like, I will do meditations and talk to animals, and I had dragons come to me. I know about Bigfoot more than a lot of people because I have a telepathic connection with Bigfoot. And I know this sounds insane. At one point in time, I would never have mentioned this on YouTube or on air or anything, but now my guides are like, no, Lori, people are really opening up to this, and they need to hear this because this is what's happening. These beings are out there. And that's what the children's book talks about is, we need to realize that this stuff exists. And for those that are scientific minded, I get it because I kind of am too, being from the IT field. But yeah, there's so much more out there. There's no way we're not meant to learn about all of it either. I don't think we should know about all of it, but honestly, the veils are getting thinner now in answer to your question. And and people that are denying and say, oh, there's no such thing as ghosts or there's no such thing as Bigfoot. Those are the ones that are actually being forced into those situations. They're seeing Bigfoot, they're seeing cryptids, they're seeing spirits. And I think that's kind of interesting because it's like they're being forced to admit that it is out there.
It's interesting. It is interesting. I completely agree. I feel like the veil is getting thinner again. And we're in a time of a great shift and awakening that's happening. And what's interesting is so many people deny their own reality. So many people have experience in their lives that's maybe paranormal or psychic. And then they want to be like, I'll just chalk it up to whatever. But what's fascinating to me is people also do that in their third dimensional reality. They don't want to see what's actually wrong in their relationships. They want everything's just fine. And so people deny their third dimensional reality and oftentimes can't cope with it because of whatever kind of stressors we're under, whether they're personal or more societal. And so sometimes we're just so overwhelmed. I think that it's like, I'm just going to shelf that because I can't even deal with what's in front of me. And I feel like we're really being called to heal. And I think as we heal and we gain the capacity to cope with what's happening in our third dimensional reality, we can start to learn to rely on what's happening in these subtle realms because it actually can help us in our third dimensional lives.
That's an excellent point. I've actually seen elementals. Usually it's not as clear as what I'm looking at you, but I've actually been out walking with my dog. This was like maybe 10 years ago, and I saw something really kind of scary, and it was like through a thin veil. And then for like maybe 2 seconds, and my guide's like, no, you were actually looking through a veil. And like when people see Bigfoot, sometimes they see them, I keep hearing things about how they can cloak themselves, but my guides are like, no, it's actually, they step through portals. It's some of both, but there's a paranormal aspect to it. And you know how some people claim to see like the lights above Bigfoot and stuff like that? Well, my guides said, no, those are actually portals to other worlds. So there's a lot of big species of Bigfoot that have the ability to travel like that. And the government knows about all of this. And so if you watch Expedition Bigfoot, it actually talks about all of this as well. And that's kind of just an example of what there is out there. We can be walking, like that features a ghost town. We could be walking out in the middle of nowhere and we could be getting watched by others, by something that's interdimensional. And there are so many stories. David Paulides has some really interesting books out there about all of this, about how people have disappeared. Some actually come back. Some missing people are like, they just appear kind of where they were before, or they just appear somewhere else in nature and they're safe. He has a bunch of really good books that talk about missing persons cases. Not real strong about the paranormal aspect, but that's kind of where some of them go.
Interesting. Are there let's talk about the energy of these portals, because I mean, I have so many questions. Sorry, my head is kind of spinning.
It's pretty fascinating.
It totally is. But I also want to be careful that people don't get scared about this stuff, because I also feel like sometimes we have to be this vibrational match to experiences in our life, right? So what might be happening in somebody's life that would cause them to have this experience, or to disappear or something like that?
It's not always the person's fault. It's, my guides are kind of telling me now, it could be like if they're in a dark place, and it's kind of what I'm getting, but it's not always, that could be part of it, because there are so many different, it's not just Bigfoot we're talking about with the portals. They're like dinosaurs, and I mean, I've heard of some really crazy stories, and there are all kinds of different things that can come in and out of portals. And a lot of them are protected. Like when I get a client sitting in front of me, I'll be like, do you know you have a portal in your house or in your backyard? I'll pick up on stuff like that. But it's well protected. So some portals are, some are not. Some can actually be associated with otherworldly beings. And, that's where it can get really scary. I don't know the percentage of people that go missing. I'm not telling your audience to be terrified and not go hiking or or back hiking or backpacking. It's the word I'm looking for. It's just use your intuition, kind of, because not everybody is a psychic medium, nor do you have to be. It comes down to intuition. If that forest goes quiet and you're not hearing insects, you're not hearing any animal noises, it's just a little too quiet, that can be indicative of being like literally in a portal. Because I experienced that in Sedona, and there it's relaxing. So a lot of the times it's not like they're bad things, but it's just awareness. If you plan on going hiking somewhere, just kind of ask yourself, is this a safe place to? And it's not necessarily just for portals. I mean, you've got animals and things like that out there too, that are just as much of a danger. With me, my guides, I was actually out hiking once, and I had climbed up the hill, or was heading up the hill to continue the hike, and they're like, you're not going to want to keep doing this. You need to turn back around. And I said, well, why? They're like, just do it now, or you're not going to have much time to turn around. So they said there was a mountain lion up there.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so it's good to be able to have that connection to spirit. And that's what I tell people. It's, having that connection with spirit guides can help with safety. There is guides. They're there to protect you and guide you on your journey. So that's what I tell people. It can be for safety, but just trust your intuition. Mm-hmm. I mean, the chances of that happening are pretty slim, but it happens a lot more often than people realize that. And that's what David Pilates talks about in his books, because there are a lot of missing persons cases. And it's pretty fascinating.
So let's segue that, because I know you work on these cold cases, on these missing person cases. I'd love to hear more about your work in that. And I don't know how much you can share about that. I don't know how.
No, I can't mention any names or anything. And we did just get the group is called the Find Me Group, out of Arizona. And there's a former CIA agent that has started it. I think it's been at least 10 years, if not a lot longer. And there's like 100 psychic mediums that work together. And what he does is send out an email to all of us saying, okay, this is the last known place where this person was seen, or the person was killed and something happened, but they know they're dead, and this is the circumstances surrounding it. Let us know who did it and why they did it, that kind of thing. So it's one of those two. Either they think they're still alive, or there's a body, and they want us to know. We have to give the details surrounding it. And as a medium, we know it's not like they just take any medium. They will actually give you 3 test cases. And there's another strong medium I think she's been there from the beginning, and she'll actually test you. She'll give you 3 test cases and ask you to pick up on the details of it. So it's not like any medium can just join, because that doesn't do us any good if it's somebody that's either not the real deal, or hasn't, established themselves enough to be able to help. So, but yeah, we've actually solved a lot of cases. And I think it was a couple of years ago, it might've been like something like 30% or something of cases, 25-30%. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but and what people don't realize, like a lot of people think psychic mediums are fake, or they're just doing this to make money. And that's the perfect way to let people know, no, that's not the case. Look at how many are actually psychic detectives. A lot of them do this full time. And there's those of us who are helping with cold cases and things like that. And so, and you've got your police, of course. That's where the details go back to, is the police officers to help find these people. And some are actually able to sketch details of the suspects, and they've actually found people that way. Exactly. Yeah. It takes a lot of talent. So people need to stop and think, okay, these people are real and they can do a lot of good.
Well, and they are being used by our government, like you said, you know, I mean, and I was actually going to ask you about that. I was just on this Dr. Stephen Greer cruise, and with Dr. Greer, we talked a lot about some of the government operations where they utilize people with gifts.
Like the remote viewing and
Yes. And so that was actually my question is, you know, what skills are you using? Is it more remote viewing to see, you know, the crime scene, or is it more, you know, communicating with that deceased person who was the victim to help utilize to solve the case?
That's a really good question, because I've had both happen. I'm sure a lot of them, and it depends on our abilities. Like some are really strong astrologers, so they will use that skill. And that's why he gives us the time of birth, the place of birth, because that's what they need. For me, I'm not, you know, I'd like to learn more about the astrology part of it, but for me, it's just seeing. And sometimes if the person's deceased, that person will come to me and say, this is what happened. A couple of times I've had them come to me in dreams and they've shown themselves to me. And you have to really trust, which is hard for me to do. I think it's hard for a lot of mediums to really trust what you're seeing in it, because you don't want to report the wrong details.
Absolutely.
That can be a real challenge.
Critical.
Yeah. And it's a good question, because I think remote viewing does come into as a part of it. It's what you're seeing. You really have to, for me, meditation works because it puts you in a quiet place, and I have to do it for at least 10 to 20 minutes. And then that's when I start seeing and hearing things more.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of mediums, they might not think of it as remote viewing, but to me, it kind of is. When I've done antique readings, I've done them into the past, and I've been able to pick up on the history of the antique. Like we use an antique doll with AZ Ghost Adventures. We take it with us as a trigger item, and I literally started picking up, you know, like a couple hours worth of history on that doll. So it kind of works the same way with the missing persons cases. And so it's different. Sometimes it might be more clairvoyance, and then I'll hear things as well. There's certain spirit guides that will step forward, and I'll talk to my higher self as well to get validation on things. And then a lot of us use Google Earth as maps to kind of pinpoint where either the body might be or where the person might be. And sometimes I'll see, like, I'll get lines, like I'll start getting like a bullseye where they might be located. So it's just different. It's different with each case.
That's incredible. How did you get involved with the Find Me group?
Good question. So there's a really talented psychic medium out of Phoenix, out of the astrology store. And I knew that he was in the group. So I started asking him about it. And I said, are they interested in any more mediums? And at the time they were. And I had met the person that started the group too, the CIA agent. And he's like, at the time, he's like, yeah. And so he hooked me up with the medium that I mentioned, that she provides the test cases. And so it kind of worked out. They were looking for mediums at the time. So yeah, just kind of pieces fell into place, and I got tested. And I was so stressed after when I was being tested. I'm like, am I picking up on the right details? And she's like, no, Lori. She's like, you picked up on a lot of stuff with those cases. She's like, you're the real deal.
I want to talk about trust, because that theme keeps coming up again and again. And I know for me, you know, some of the trauma that I've had throughout my life caused mistrust between me and me, right? And that's what trauma does. It kind of separates you from yourself and creates these aspects of yourself that you don't fully trust. And so for me, personally healing was a big catalyst in developing my abilities.
Yeah.
How did you learn to trust yourself? Is it just something that, you know, as like you had external validation that things were right? Was it a healing journey for you?
To be honest, like with the Find Me group, that was a really, you know, I'm trying to think of the words. That was probably one of the defining moments that I'm of the psychic medium thing, because when a really talented medium says that, you know, has been instrumental in finding missing people and all of that, tells you you're the real deal, and we want you to help find missing people, and we know you can do this. That, you know, that was instrumental in being able to trust myself. Even then, I think we all, like I said, a lot of mediums still doubt ourselves, because some of the stuff that we tell people, whether with clients or with missing people, it's like, is this the right detail I'm picking up on? And it's really hard to believe, because it's not scientific. Sometimes it turns scientific when they find the person that you're looking for, when a bunch of us come together and we have all of the right details, and the police say, okay, well, 10 different mediums came up saying this person's located in California, and this is the spot, this is the circumstances. So when the number of us all right about a certain case, then that gives them a really strong lead to go and find a person.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how it works.
Wow. That is so amazing. And I imagine so rewarding to be able to use your gifts to help families. I can't even begin to put myself in the victim's family shoes and I imagine the relief that it brings to those families,
Yeah.
and just to be able to get some peace and closure, hopefully.
Closure, I was going to say, that's a lot of what it's about, is closure. I mean, even if it's somebody, whether somebody's found and brought back to the family, or it was just about finding a body, it is all about closure. I mean, it's not like you take that pain away. No. That's something they have to deal with, but at least they know. It's that not knowing is just got to be excruciating.
I can't even imagine.
No.
So yeah, what a beautiful gift that is, and that you're able to offer people. So I want to talk about discernment too, right? Because I know as people are developing in their gifts, it can be hard to discern, is this my internal voice? Is this my imagination? Exactly. Or am I hearing psychic information? I know for me, when it's psychic information, it comes with a feeling in my body. It's a little bit more visceral than just maybe my daily monkey mind, thoughts. What does it feel like for you? And how do you have that discernment?
That's a really good point. Because that's a challenge for every medium. I don't care if you've been a medium for 2 years or 50. We all struggle with that. With me, it's just it's kind of a combination of, okay, I see this, and I'll just be like, either during meditation or after, I'll just start hearing maybe the name of a street or a neighborhood or something like that. Or I think one time I actually heard the address itself. Wow. And then I went on to Google Earth and found the address. And then I can hear spirit saying, okay, that's it. And so it's a combination of things. For some, they might
inner ear, or do you actually hear it projected outward sometimes?
No, it's inner.
Yeah.
It's inner.
Okay.
For some people, it could be that strong, but for me, it's just it's a combination of trusting what you're hearing, using that map. A lot of us, I think, do use the Google Earth to kind of pinpoint where they might be located. Some probably have such strong abilities that they can get the address and hear exactly the exact address, and maybe even get a visual of the suspect. I've done that sometimes. I've been able to do sketches, but not as much as some of the others. Some of the other mediums, there's one I heard that, I don't know if he's still with the group, but he was able to do sketches to the point where the police went out and found the suspect and arrested the suspect. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that would be really cool. So it's developing your ability, and it's trusting. Again, it's all about trust. For me, it's seeing things, it's going to the map, and my spirit guides keep trying to get me to not use the map. But like, you're using Google Maps, you have to keep trusting what you're getting. But it's hard because you want to make sure you have the right details.
Well, especially something so critical.
Exactly.
And so then I'm sure you do other things with your gifts too, right? Probably just help people who are grieving or just need guidance or counsel from a more spiritual perspective.
Yeah, exactly. I do the individual readings, whether it's at Serendipity here in Payson, or sometimes I'll just do phone readings or go to people's homes, things like that. I will actually, what I really enjoy, a lot of it is spiritual counseling and letting people know their loved ones are there. Giving them the details, saying, okay, they're here with you as a spirit guide, and they're giving me this guidance for you to follow. Recently, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I actually did a reading on somebody's yard. And I said, you have fairies out here, and they're wanting that little fairy house moved to this tree over here. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. And so that was fun. I've done that with land too. I've done readings and walked around on people's property. And that's one of the coolest things. Like I did with the psychic archaeology and Young. That's really cool to be able to go people's homes and say, this is what I'm picking up here. You actually have history here. You have some Native Americans that are walking through your house at noon each day. And so it's really cool, some of the stuff you pick up on. And people don't understand that spirits that are associated with land and with your home can actually become your spirit guides.
Oh, wow. It's just that vested interest that they have in that land.
And people might be drawn to a house for that reason. That happens a lot more than people realize. And they're like, oh, people always ask me. And I'm like, well, I'm picking up on Native Americans, or I'm picking up on a settler or a pioneer with this description. And sometimes they can confirm it, because people might sense things and hear things, but they don't understand what's going on. And so I'll tell them, okay, this is something good. It's usually something good that's acting as a spirit guide. Mm-hmm. If it's not, I will let them know also. Maybe you need to do it. I've done cleansings for people. I went to Phoenix and did a cleansing on a house, that kind of thing. So most of the time it's positive, and they're there because of the history of the land, whether it's from like 50 years prior or 100 years. And I can usually tell them if it's something, if it's a recent passing, because you've got an earthbound ghost, and then spirits are like something that's transcended to the next level. And then you've got your spirit guides. And sometimes people use those terms interchangeably, like, okay, spirits and ghosts are the same thing, but they're really not.
Tell me, what is the difference between a spirit and, is a ghost more that earthbound, like they're struggling to transition?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. They might, most of the times it could be like a tragic, like a car accident, getting run over by a car, something tragic like that can hold them to the, they've got that earthbound energy and they're held to earth, maybe because of a person. Some antiques have that energy. I can usually look at an antique and know what kind of energy is associated with it. And then a spirit is something it's an entity that's risen from ghost to the next level. It's transcended. However, you don't have to be a ghost first. You can, there's a lot of clients I've read, I'm like, do you realize your mom went right to the spirit guide level? Or they went right from passing away to the spirit level? Because some never, make it to the spirit guide level. So there's kind of different levels. It's not just, okay, we become a ghost, then we pass on to a spirit, then we become a spirit guide. It's different for each person that passes. Mm-hmm. Some are so strong spiritually that they literally pass from, when they pass from Earth, they actually go on to become a spirit guide.
Wow.
And I've told, and when I've met with some clients, they said that makes sense because my mom or my dad was very spiritual and they did a lot to help the community. So That's pretty interesting.
Absolutely. It's funny. I heard something the other day that made a lot of sense to me. They were saying, there's no such thing as an old soul. Eternity is eternity. Yeah. And so we were never created, and, energy can't be destroyed either. So there's an eternal sense to all of our souls, but some are more resistant in healing and progressing. And some have progressed further and taken more advantage of opportunities that they've been given. And that's what defines an old soul. And I don't know if that resonates with you or if that's what makes them, be able to just transition, like, okay, I've done this 1,000 times. Now I'm going to go back in and work as a guide in spirit form, because I'm tired of being in the human form.
And there's different levels. That's a really good point, because there's levels here on Earth where people transcend, and like what you're doing with your clients, and a lot of psychic mediums, even people that aren't spiritual in nature, can transcend. It's just your thought process, how you treat people, how you treat the planet, all of that makes you a bigger person, a better person. And it happens like that on the other side too. So somebody like that might be more in alignment with becoming right to a spirit or a spirit guide level. So it's so personal for every person that passes over, that crosses over.
Absolutely.
We're not going to have the answers to all of this. We weren't meant to. At least I hope not, because everyone wants the answers to the paranormal. All these investigators are out there trying to find answers. And I'm like, we're not meant to know the answers to everything. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of mystery. And I think part of spirituality is also leaning into mystery and
exactly
having some fun with it, even enjoying some of the mysteries, But I think sometimes we tend to take life so seriously and want to figure it all out. I mean, I know I'm guilty of that at times too. I want to know and I want to figure things out.
We all are. And as a paranormal investigator, it's fun because I can tell, Rita and the rest of the group, this is what I'm picking up on. This is the spirit energy I'm picking up on. Because when investigators go into locations, and it's good that they won't focus on the history, need to learn the history to move forward. But at the same time, understand that this pioneer settler that that might have died on this land, that's a part of this building. Yes, they're here and we can communicate with her, but you're going to have other kinds of energies coming through, like somebody who might have died 2 years before. That's what happens a lot. And I tell them, guys, this is not the same person we're used to communicating with. This is a whole new person. This is a whole new energy. And there's been spirits and ghosts that have come to them saying, I need help crossing over. They've come through our equipment. And then one person had to come get me and say, Lori, somebody needs help with this. And so they've called me into the building or the location, and I helped cross the person over. That's happened a few times.
Let's go back. Equipment. What kind of equipment do you guys use, and what's going on in these things?
So we have what we call, so it's most of what a lot of other investigators and you see investigators on TV using with the shows. So they're all we have what we call motion sensor balls or cat balls, because they're little balls that cats play with. But so it's stuff that's initiated by motion. We have REM pods. They sound off when there's motion or a certain temperature change, that kind of thing. And we have grids that we put up on the wall so that if any kind of spirit or shadow crosses through, they can see that kind of thing. So there's different kinds of equipment that we use. And I kind of mentioned that in the children's book as well. It depends. We've got what they call ghost or spirit boxes. So we set those up, and then it's based on radio waves. And so the spirits or ghosts supposedly can speak through that.
Interesting.
And that's
you actually can hear.
Yes, actually. Yeah, I shouldn't say supposedly, because actually, that does happen. And it's kind of creepy because sometimes our demon will come through and we kind of laugh because, not that we don't have demons, but the buildings we investigate, my guides are like, no, you guys are all fine. You don't have any kind of energy like that. So, because a lot of times the good spirits the good energy can actually help chase out anything bad that might try and come in.
Interesting.
So yeah, the demon thing, we get that pretty much every investigation we have, but it's just, we all laugh like, because there's one historic spirit that does that, and he messes with that and does that. And I told Rita, I'm like, who's doing that, right? And she's like, yeah, that makes sense. So it's fun to be able to do those investigations. It's something more fun.
Yeah. Is this the AZ Ghost Adventures stuff that you do? Okay.
And they're actually, I feature them in the children's book. They're an amazing group of people. So
what do you guys go to historic sites in Arizona and just listen and see what's going on, energetically there? Or
yeah, and we have a lot of our locations are in Globe, Arizona. Mm-hmm. And then we have one called Acadia Ranch near Tucson, Arizona. And Oracle, it's Oracle. And they're all fascinating in their own ways. They all have certain spirits, the regular spirits that we deal with. And then there's always new energy that comes in and out. Acadia has some pretty interesting energy. There's always something new there. There's like Native American spirits that kind of come and go. Those are usually what I pick up on just because of my interest in archaeology, I think. That might have something. Makes sense. But I told Rita that, and she's like, yeah, that kind of makes, because it's historic land. There's a lot that has happened there. It was a tuberculosis sanatorium at one point, so you can imagine. Exactly, that's some serious stuff right there. There's some really sick people and people that passed away there, and so but yeah, there's a lot of history at all of these locations, and it's not just
everywhere, right? This land is
exactly.
That's where you go. There's history, and it's ancient.
Yeah. That's what I tell people. I'm like, it's not just historic, so-called historic buildings. You could have buildings that have historic antiques and things like that can have that energy. The land itself holds energy from people who used to live there, and so you could be in a new home that has that kind of energy.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing on Earth is new. It's all ancient, and people have inhabited it for so long. So I guess there's always going to be energy lingering or imprints. So when you're picking up on those imprints, are they energetic imprints that are left, or is it actual spirits still hanging out and monitoring, the land that they've loved, or is it both?
It's both, because that energy could be built up from the spirits, from the earthbound ghosts that are there. And usually there's both. It's not necessarily just earthbound ghosts from the tragedy, but I think that's where a lot of the high energy can come from.
Yeah.
So it's a combination. That energy is built up. The energy is built up from the investigators that are there. There's a lot of different investigative teams that go to these different locations. So think about that kind of energy as well. Just from the land, from the people that passed away there. Absolutely. And that's kind of what makes it pretty interesting. But you don't want to go in there and taunt stuff either. You need to have, that's why I love this group so much, because they have a lot of respect for the spirits that are there and for the history. They don't go in and start saying, oh, show yourself. And that's just, you don't do that. That's just, I don't care what kind of spirit you're trying to, you don't do that.
Well, people are people, right? Whether in this form or any other form. And it's like, I think all life forms deserve respect. And
exactly.
Yeah. And it sounds like you help them if they're, if they aren't a ghost form and need help crossing over. It sounds like there's assistance available there.
Yeah, and most of the time, because with these buildings, they want to keep a lot of the spirits and ghosts don't necessarily want to be moved on. That's what they knew. That's the land that they loved and the place that they loved. I usually don't get asked unless something newer comes in and says I need help. Then they'll come and get me and say, this person needs to be moved. Most of the time that doesn't happen. It's happened 2 or 3 times since I've been working with the group. But absolutely, yeah.
Wow. So I'm curious, with the children's book, what is your hope? Because I noticed children are coming in more aware, and like you said, the veil's getting thinner. Children are having these experiences. And so what's your goal with this book for them?
Just to basically educate people on what elementals are, what cryptids are, the paranormal versus the supernatural, the energies that are out there. Because like we had touched on earlier, Bigfoot is both paranormal and supernatural. I've had telepathic contact with Bigfoot here in Payson, and they've even said, no, a lot of us are actually interdimensional. Just the capabilities. We have a lot of people have telepathic connections with otherworldly beings. And so this book actually touches on a lot of that. It talks about portals to interdimensional realms. It talks about the elementals, and Bigfoot in his own right is an elemental. He's like an earth creature. He's out there watching over land and protecting land, I think, in his own right. Mm-hmm. So I consider him an elemental. The same with, I love the Loch Ness Monster. That's kind of involved in this book. So it kind of ties all that together, because the book is about things that we can't understand. I'm not sure we'll ever fully understand some of this or if it's ever meant to be. And I know science is trying to find out, like even Bigfoot, there's a lot of studies about Bigfoot going on, the military government. Oh yeah, absolutely. And so that there's a huge focus on Bigfoot. So it's kind of tying all that together and letting teenagers and kids know, even adults are going to love this book.
Yeah.
It's going to force people to think about things they've never really thought about before.
I love that, right? It's fun to be stretched outside of, your normal everyday thinking and expanding, our consciousness.
And this is a world that I created a shape-shifting world in this book. And I love it because it's an ever-evolving planet. And that's part of our world. And it's something that there's a portal that leads to this place from Vulture City Ghost Town, but the world is fascinating because it's shape-shifting. It's, like we talk about shape, there's certain things that are called shapeshifters, like shadow beings and things like that. But then this whole world evolves. It literally becomes from like a mesa to an ocean. It transforms just like that. Yeah. And it's pretty fascinating. So just the landscape, the world itself is constantly changing, and the beings too.
Let's talk about that because I think our world is shifting now. It always is, but it feels like there's an acceleration of that shift.
Yeah.
What do you feel? When you tap into that energy of where we're evolving into kind of this tipping point, if you will, that people are speaking of on our planet, what are your thoughts about all that?
Oh, that could be a whole show in itself or like a series. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like things are progressing to the point that it's not so good, but then my guides are like, no, things seem like they're getting worse, but things are about to get a lot better because like there's this whole story about the core of Earth and what's been happening with that and the shift and how it seems to be reversing. And they said they didn't know if it was stagnating or reversing, things like that. And my own guides are like, there were otherworldly guides that are responsible for that. And I'm like, so does this mean the planet's gonna be destroyed? Or they're like, no, actually, they're like, it's going to get worse at first. And that's a lot of this weather that's happening. I think it's due to part of the issue with Earth's core and with the climate and thing. I think it's a number of things, but they're like, my understanding is things are going to shift. We're being forced into a new reality. We cannot keep treating our planet like this. We can't keep treating each other. I mean, it's just horrible. People are horrible to each other. And that's why so many more people are being forced into their spirituality. I've been dealing with a lot of clients. I'm like, do you realize you have this healing ability and you can do this, this, and this? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, are you using it? I said, because you're going to start getting forced to use it. And that's been the common message with a lot of my clients is you've got this ability, you need to start using it because whether it's spiritual, physical, emotional healing, or Reiki healing, or as a psychic medium, spiritual counseling, there's so many different ways to heal. And we're all literally being pushed into it. And there's a reason for that. I don't know if you can say the whole planet will be destroyed, but I think like a lot of people, aliens are going to be destroying them. I'm like, no, they're actually helping us. And they really are. They're helping us more than people realize. And so there might be some that don't have that good intent, but I think that's, we're seeing, and that might be why people are having more experiences with otherworldly beings too. They're here to watch us. I really feel like a lot of that is protective energy. And I know because mine are telling me that. But yeah, they're like, no, it might get worse at first with the weather and all of that, the climate conditions, but they're like, there's going to be a tipping point, a turning point. We're being forced into a new reality.
Does the divide, right? This polarization that we're all feeling. And I feel like it's interesting. Like in my book, I was shown these 4 phases for people to heal. And the more I've kind of sat with my words as my book's been in, editing, which is such a process.
Oh, I know.
I realized I was like, well, that's not just individual, that's collective. It's like, first we have to know ourselves, right? First we have to take an honest look at ourselves as we heal, and we have to say, who am I? And that means, what are the subconscious patterns that are running my life that I'm not even aware of? But then we have to deconstruct them or die, right? And before anything new can be rebirthed, we have to get rid of the things that aren't working for us individually and collectively. And I think that's the phase that the earth is in right now, is really deconstruct, and then the next is birth yourself, right? Because you can become something new once you've gotten rid of the density of what doesn't serve you. But that's a really uncertain space, right? Because when you start to realize, oh, maybe the world wasn't what I thought it was, or maybe I'm not who I thought I was, or maybe my reality isn't what I thought it was. I'm kind of new here. Like everything feels a little bit fragile and I'm not really confident anymore like I used to be because that's all been torn down and I'm stripped down to this, whatever. I've been held in this womb, this dark space, and now I'm seeing the light and it feels new, and then we finally get to know ourselves in the truth of who we are, which is, a fractal of creator, of the divine. And I feel like we're still in that deconstruction death phase right now, where it's like the old consciousness built these infrastructures on our planet that are no longer serving us, and we're becoming aware of that right now, and we're challenging it, and we're bucking the system, and we're questioning it, and now we're tearing it down. You know, the lies are being exposed. It's a really interesting time to be here on our planet.
And that's a really good point. The same with a lot of my clients. They're like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm working this job, but I don't feel like this is supposed to happen. And sometimes their spirit guides or mine will say, okay, no, this is coming for you. And then in some instances, they'll be like, oh yeah, you're right. It happened right when you said it would. So we're all being forced into a new reality of some point.
It is. And I feel like I want to validate that for our listeners. Like, you're brave souls, right? Like, we're brave souls. It takes a lot to say, and that's why we are so dishonest with ourselves. We're like, oh yeah, no, we'll just keep doing the job that we hate, because it's comfortable, it's safe, right? And like, I understand that. And it takes so much courage. And I think this is where we cultivate the deepest part of our faith, is saying, I know this isn't for me. And even though I don't see what's ahead, I'm just going to trust that like the steps will be revealed to me as I walk forward on this path. And it's so scary and so uncertain.
It's just trying to have that faith. And a lot of people are really struggling.
They are. Do you have a message of hope for our listeners? Like, if they're kind of in a similar boat, they're going through it, they're like, I can't see what's ahead of me, but I know I don't want what's behind me. Like, how do you cope with that?
Well, that's why I tell people, like, communicating with your spirit guides, and there's different ways you can do that, whether through meditation or just quiet time, just talking to them. There's different ways. Just kind of trust your intuition. I think everybody has good intuition. It's just trusting it. Because for me, everything's been coming when it needs to. Like, every time I thought I would have been out of my house like 5 or 6 months ago, and money keeps coming. Mm-hmm. So it's just take that as a sign. Take your experiences as a sign. Like, don't force yourself into a reality that you're not comfortable with. And that's pretty much what you have to do. And a lot of people who aren't sure, that's where a lot of my clients come in. They're like, well, I'm doing this job, but I don't feel like it's where I need to be. I'm like, no, because you have these abilities, and I feel like you're going to be making this shift to this place, that kind of thing. And even as a psychic medium, we don't have all the answers. You could be the best one out there, and you're not going to have all the answers. You just kind of have to trust your intuition. And
you're in a human body, right? So it's like,
exactly.
We all have these lessons that we have to learn while we're here.
And I'm one of those. I was guided to you for a reason. So.
Individually, we're all kind of feeling that, and now we're all experiencing it collectively.
Yeah.
And my hope is that we can start to bridge this divide and just love each other and support each other through it, instead of pointing the fingers and blaming and, realizing everybody's just trying to do the best that they can.
And my guides are behind me going, the society is going to be forced to become one. And that's otherworldly societies. That's kind of how they think. It's more of a collective. And my guides are like, humans are going to be forced to become more like that. Not that we have to become otherworldly and, like the Borg kind of thing, but it's just, I keep hearing, society has to think as one. We can't try and fight each other, the wars, things like that. It's just, that's just not going to help anything. And people have been talking about another war coming on.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I think more and more people are having these contact experience with otherworldly beings, and they're getting the same message. And I truly feel that that's how disclosure is going to happen. It's going to happen where it happens with individuals like you and I, and it's happening to our neighbors, and it's happening to people we haven't spoken to yet. And I think having this conversation is important because it normalizes those experiences, so we can start talking about it and sharing and not feeling isolated in it. And they're not going to be on the White House lawn, because those people are dangerous. They're going to come to you and I and the people doing the healing, and the people who are able to share those messages so that we can learn and integrate it into this experience.
Yeah, the world's in kind of a scary place, but it's just like you had said, it's just trust your intuition.
And I truly believe that God put the music on our hearts from the time we were little, right? Like, so many people can say, when I was 3 years old, this was my dream. And it's interesting to watch how their aptitude, skills, and abilities really align with who they wanted to be when they were in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And I think if we can release the fear, then we can walk more in alignment and authenticity, with those gifts and with those abilities, and create some pretty beautiful music on this planet, outside of the traditional paradigms that we've known. So.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good point. And I think if you're really meant to do something, like a lot of people do go to spiritual counselors, psychic mediums, people like you to get validation. So that's a lot of what it's about. But just focus on the messages you keep getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that can be a huge clue as to what you need to be doing. Like if you're being guided to people who are spiritual counselors or mediums, and they keep giving you the same messages, you need to focus on that. Start thinking about that. Yeah.
Trust it. Don't put yourself at risk, but slowly start taking those next steps. Slowly start shedding the things that don't work in your life and walking towards, I think, what you're passionate about, what lights you up, what makes you excited. Because it's pretty crazy. It's like when you start living in alignment with your gifts and your abilities, it's like there's supernatural energy that starts to fuel you because you're passionate, you know, and it shifts.
Exactly.
It's like you don't feel drained by work anymore. You know, it's fun. It's exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's a lot to come for the world, and it's just
Absolutely. Well, Lori, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for being on today. For everybody listening, if you guys want a reading with Lori, if you want to learn more about your own path, about your own guides, I'm going to link all of her information in the show notes so that you guys can, you know, get a hold of her and reach out. Or if you feel like somebody that you know or love is maybe grieving and could benefit from a reading with her, feel free to share this episode and let them know that the links to her information is in the show notes.
I appreciate that, Kristy. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Yes, it's been so much fun. Okay, everybody, we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.